you have to not only find the answer in these documents, but reference the information, what documents in, where it is. And what we really created was a virtual chief of staff.
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by OneAccord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the Value Factory presented by OneAccord. We've got a great topic today, and it's really about AI as a growth strategist and how SMBs, small and mid-sized businesses, leaders can unlock that value, drive culture, and lead responsibly. You know, there's so much buzz about the pros and cons of AI, and it's an evolving technology, evolving very quickly. So we have a great guest, industry expert in this, and John Manzanares is a seasoned technology executive. He's also a fractional CIO, Chief Information Officer with OneAccord, the sponsor of these Value Factory podcasts. He has over 20 years of executive experience helping mid-market companies grow, scale, and prepare for a successful exit, which is why OneAccord loves him, because that's beginning, middle, and end of what we're trying to do in increasing business value. He has led countless digital transformation initiatives that have delivered more than 10 million in EBITDA improvements. That's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. I've said this so many times, I'm
Got it.
forgetting my own acronyms. So welcome, John. So glad you could join us. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with our small to mid-sized business owner and leader audience before we jump in? I've got
No,
lots of questions for you.
Yeah, no, great to jump into the questions. I just want to express my gratitude for having me on the podcast and being part of OneAccord. And I look forward to our conversation today because AI is at the top of mind of everybody. It's all over the news, and I'm sure that SMB leaders are wondering, what do I do? How do I leverage it? Is it gonna take away my business, disrupt me? And so let's just jump into it.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'd like you to start off, John, by talking about how small and mid market business leaders can harness the power of AI to transform their organizations. I know it's
Yeah,
a big question, but that's kind of what's on everybody's mind.
well, let's start out with a bold claim. I posted this in an article recently, and I talked about the idea of what would you do if you were to get 10 hours a week back for you and your team, right? Where
That's
would you
huge.
spend that time? And really, that's around leveraging AI. And I'll go into that a little bit. It's not about getting the time back as much as it is creating capacity, right? Capacities for those entrepreneurs. And I know in the most recent value podcast that I listened to, you were talking about Steve Naska and that whole dependency conundrum, right? The fact that
Oh,
they
the
are
company's dependency on the owner.
yeah, that
Yeah.
they're that decision dependency that everybody in that company has to come to them to ask them questions, that they've set this up to really kind of take away, it's robbing them of their time. And so what I've done and what I've seen happen out there is the idea of having AI become your leadership multiplier. And so let me talk a little bit about that, give you an
Yeah.
example.
Explain
So
that.
the CEO is the bottleneck for all the decisions, right, that flow through them. And so what we ended up doing is building a custom GPT. I won't get into the technical details of it, but what we did is we took a GPT and we trained it on the company playbooks and the policies and the procedures. And the owner, was sitting down and writing down all of his questions and answers that people were coming to him. And we trained the GPT on that. And we set up the guardrails so that the GPT would only answer questions relating to those documents. So we didn't let it go out to the internet and search for answers and come up with the wrong things. And we specifically instructed it to say, you have to not only find the answer in these documents, but reference the information, what documents in, where it is. And what we really created was a virtual chief of staff.
Hmm.
And then you went to the leadership team and you instructed them, you help train them, you get them on board, and you say, ask the chief of staff first.
Talk more about that chief of staff idea.
Yeah, so the idea is we built a custom GPT and we trained it with all of the policies, procedures, and playbooks about the company, and including the owner's questions and answers, frequently asked questions, and loaded that up into a custom GPT that we call the virtual chief of staff. Then we instructed the employees, all of his direct leaders, to go in and ask the chief of staff first before they came to the owner. And what that did is it helped remove a lot of that time. Up to 70% of the questions that were coming to the owner were now being able to be answered by the virtual chief of staff. But it didn't just stop there, because what it also did is it gave his direct reports confidence. It helped teach them where to find that information, because it gave the reference of where that document, where the answer was found, right? It's in the sales playbook. It's in the employee handbook. It's in the HR guides and responsibilities, right? So it helped them understand. So it gave them confidence to become more effective leaders, and it helped to separate that leadership dependency and built a stronger team. So it gave you the leverage and space to lead, right? It built the confidence and trust in your team, and it gave that responsibility back.
Yeah, essentially archiving the owner's institutional knowledge so other people could access it without troubling the owner. That's great, and it's firewalled, or it's private, only accessible to
So
that team.
You do need to make sure you set up the guidelines and make sure that it's safe. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the conversation. But there are things that you need to do to make sure that that doesn't go out there and come up with all of the hallucinations and the answers that you're reading about in the press.
Right. And explain to our audience just briefly, John, what an AI hallucination is.
So an AI hallucination is the fact that AI is a pleasing machine, and it will try to please you with the answer, even if that answer is not correct. Now, remember, artificial intelligence and AI, large language models, are trained on the internet. And some of the internet is right, and an awful lot of it is not. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be mindful of that. And so by setting up this virtual assistant, right, this chief of staff, what you're doing is you're putting the guardrails on and you're locking it down. You're saying, don't go to the internet and search for this stuff. Look in these documents only. And don't make things up.
Yeah, no, that makes really good sense. Thank you for that.
And it's really about like AI not taking your place, but giving you a space to be a leader. Right? So you can work on strategy, you can work on planning, you can work on the big decision points that you need to.
And I've heard you often say that AI is not a technology problem, it's really a leadership opportunity. Can you dive a little deeper into that comment?
Yeah. You know, the thing is we talk about AI as a tool, but we really should be thinking about this as how do we manage, how do we lead better and leverage the tool that's available to us, right? The tool is not going to run your business for us. So it really starts with that mindset of how do I lead, not how does the machine take over? You know, it's not about the tool, but how do we lead change? Best leaders are going to ask the question why and how, not just what does AI use. So this is not about giving up your leadership, abdicating your responsibility, your decisions, but really having AI as kind of that thought partner to help you, right? Where can we, and you think about this in a cultural space, you want to set your culture right. You as the leader are going to be seen by your employees and they're going to follow your lead. So if you're taking that lead and you're looking at AI and you're experimenting with it and you're setting the guide rails for them, then they're going to take your lead and follow it, right? So it's about empowering them, not controlling them. So one CEO I'd heard about, one of the things that he does is he opens every meeting with, where are we experimenting with AI this week, right? What does that do? That changes the mindset around AI being bad and something to be feared, but not as a threat, but as an opportunity. And it frees up your teams to feel comfortable to explore and to innovate on their own and to create the momentum that is really going to help your business in those safe experiments.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really about embedding AI into the culture of the organization.
Absolutely.
So it isn't feared, but it's actually part of the culture and an expectation in terms of advancing. So trust, I know, is a huge issue with AI, and a lot of leaders have fears and they're worried about trust. You know, people really fearing AI or using it the wrong way. So how do you create a culture where employees feel safe experimenting with this? I mean, it's kind of, just jumping on to your last comment.
Yeah, I think there's so much news out there and there's so much misinformation that's going on. And yes, some companies are are sensationalizing how AI is going to revolutionize their business. But you really, as a leader, need to communicate the why, right? You need to make sure that the employees know that AI is here to equip, not to replace. The goal is not to replace the employees, but to help, give them that to be able to effectively do their job and have more capacity to do other things, right? So it's you need to replace that fear with clarity and transparency and purpose. Why is AI here? The goal is not to replace you. The goal is to help you, this to be your thought partner. And you need to make sure you involve everybody into this. So one of the ways I've seen that done, one of the companies I worked with, they created a simple AI playbook. And what is that simple AI playbook? It has 3 rules, and it's really about a responsibility guide. And those 3 rules are very simple. Now, you can get super complex in your AI playbook, but let's start simple here. Number 1 rule, AI is here to assist you, not to make decisions for you. You still have to be part of the conversation. Number 2, protect the confidential data. Don't upload our proprietary information, our financials. Don't upload customer data, customer information that you don't want to share out there on AI. And then the third one, and this is critical, is AI always review the outputs before sharing it. You have an ownership as an employee to make sure that what comes out of AI is correct. And there's been lots of stuff in the news lately. There was an article last week about Deloitte and how they're going to have to refund a bunch of money back to Australia because there was misinformation in this huge report they produced. And so you need to own that.
Rookie mistake. You wouldn't think that from one of the major consulting firms in the
It's
universe.
it's a several $100,000 mistake. But
Man,
the takeaway is that trust is the launch pad for innovation. You have to build that trust with your employees. They have to feel safe. But the guardrails are there not to limit their capability, but to help give them that gas pedal where they can expand and they can accelerate the use of it. So if they're in a safe space and they know they're using AI the right way, then they're going to experiment. They're going to learn. They're going to get engaged. AI success is 80% culture and 20% technology.
fascinating. The second point that you brought up really struck me, and that was the privacy or confidentiality. In other words, when we're dealing with IP or confidential information, I mean, customer, just absolutely huge. You don't want to just plug in that into chat gp because it's going to store that. When I've got a free account, I always sign on because I want it to get to know me. And it's really fascinating how much better it gets and really kind of holds on to my voice. I remember I wrote a book many years ago, and I worked with a very talented editor. And we talked a lot about let's not lose your voice in my editing. And so that's one thing, but that's an example of putting information out there for anybody else.
Yeah, 100%. The AI you're using today, think of this. The AI you're using today is the worst AI you'll ever use. It is
It just
improving.
keeps getting better.
It keeps getting better. So when I started using this years ago, it has just been light years to where we are today. And it's that acceleration is only going to continue.
I remember the first time I ever used Chat GPT. Um, and just it was back in October of 2022. I mean, really at the pioneer stage, and absolutely fascinating. Big buzz. So we've talked about culture, and so once you ingrain the mindset of utilizing AI to improve efficiencies, like you say, and not replace people. But what's next? How do companies move from curiosity to strategy and really adopting it into the ethos of the company?
Yeah, and that's really where the rubber starts to hit the road, right? You need to take it from the experimentation phase and exploration to intention, right? Trust becomes focus, right? And that what you do is you start linking your strategy to your AI to your business priorities. So what you need to do is you need to start with where am I, where's the pain? How can I solve that? So it's really looking at those friction points, the time drains, the bottlenecks, the repetitive work, and then making decisions, right? So one of the companies we worked with, you have AI teams everywhere. We had AI was being used in marketing, AI was being used in sales, it was being used in operations and HR, but it really wasn't a holistic roadmap view. It was just a scattershot approach. So what we did is we did a readiness assessment. to find the high impact opportunities. And then we co-created with the business an AI roadmap and tied those back to the goals, the efficiencies, the customer experience, the decision quality, the things that were most important to them. And then we put together, and we did that in a 90-day assessment, a roadmap plan. So we aligned the efforts. We had clearly defined ROIs and leadership visibility and metrics to track those. And then we started down that journey. And one of those key components that we put together was an AI council. And an AI council is a member of key leaders across the business, across the different disciplines, who could get together and talk about the governance and the alignment and the mechanism and help make sure that that drive towards that efficiency, drive towards that future use of AI is aligned with where they're going, right? So the roadmap is really kind of the bridge from curiosity to capacity. Now, one of the troubling facts about this, and you'll see lots of things in the news about companies that are not getting ROI. There was an MIT report a couple weeks ago that talked about it. If you read into the details, what you find is that a lot of companies are doing AI, but a very small number of them are actually doing it with a roadmap and a plan. And without a roadmap and a plan, how can you expect to get the desired results when you don't know what those results are?
Right. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right?
What is it? If you don't have a destination in place, then no wind is favorable.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Well, two things occurred to me as you were sharing that, and that's really awesome. And I know timing is part of that, and I want to get into that in a moment. But as I'm listening to you, I realize that you cannot uncouple your AI strategy from your strategic plan. What I'm hearing from you is it has to be purposeful. There's got to be a plan. And, part of strategic planning is identifying those core priorities and knowing which KPIs we're going to measure, right? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I know that's an axiom that I think that goes back to the 1950s, probably a Peter Druckerism or something
probably
like
is
that.
a Peter Drucker.
But I mean, it really is. It should be ingrained in and part of your strategic plan. That's where the priorities come through.
Well, why would you treat AI any different than any other capital investment you would do in your company?
Brilliant.
Right? You're going to put together a plan. You're going to need to understand what the return on investment is. You want to know what that pro forma business plan is, piece of it is, and you want to measure to that. And so you should treat AI the same way. It's not a magic solution that you sprinkle on your business and hope for the best.
Like pixie dust.
That's right. I'll just put some AI in it. It'll make it all better.
It's like putting too much salt in the stew. If you don't know what you're doing, it's not going to go well. The second thing that occurred to me, and I don't know what you can share about this process without giving out your secret sauce, but you said this whole thing starts with an assessment, which is designed to expose the real opportunities so you can build that roadmap. Can you share with our audience a little bit of maybe some of the components of the assessment or give them some direction on where they should focus?
Yeah, happy to share that. I think what you need to start with, and this very much aligns with our client success plan, right? With OneAccord. It starts with understanding what's your vision, mission, values, what are the strategic imperatives that you're trying to do with the company. You need to understand the foundation. And that starts with the interviews. That starts with understanding where they are. This can go hand in hand with a client success plan. This can go independently of that, but it really is around, you need to stop thinking about the tool first. You need to talk about the business. And then you look at how can the tool help those strategic imperatives that you're going with.
Brilliant. That's great. Yeah, I know that we've done some, win-loss analysis. And part of that really is about interviewing the feet on the street because they know, especially when you're talking about sales and sales conversion, I mean, that doesn't always elevate to the C-suite. It's really the people on the street and that are, have customer facing responsibilities. So getting into the timing, you've talked about how every company's actually already using AI, in some way or to some extent. How can leaders use that urgency as motivation without feeling overwhelmed? I know that as it is evolving, it can be confusing and overwhelming, and that leads to fear, and that's a barrier to adoption. At least I've seen that, in the boardroom a lot.
100%. I think what you need to think about is, first of all, you're already using AI. It's in your CRM. It's in your analytics. It's in your email system. It's on your phone, right? So don't think of this as something that is to be done. It's already being done. A recent study came out and said 50% of employees are using AI and not telling their employer. Now, that's a little scary, isn't it? You
Yeah.
don't know where that comes. And if you don't have any responsible use AI roadmaps in place to help educate them on that, where's your data going, right? So the question isn't if, it's how intentional are you going to use AI? And it's about urgency, but it's not about panic, right? You as a leader have the ability to position this in the right light and the right way, right? The early movers get to learn, adapt, adjust, and become competitive differentiators for them in the industry. So let's talk about an example, the tale of two CEOs. First CEO, he builds a small exploration team. He does some quick wins. He does some reporting. He does some communication. He helps out with his use and adoption. The second CEO, he's got the wait and see mode. I'm going to wait until this becomes real. I see a lot of news out there, but I'm not ready to go.
Late adopters.
It's too complicated, right? What you're going to see is if you're waiting and seeing, your competitors are adopting it. And that's going to give them a strategic advantage. But it even gets worse because your employees are going to see that you're not adopting the new technology and someone else is. And you're going to lose talent because they want to use the technology. They want to go somewhere else. They want to feel like they're in a progressive, forward-thinking company. So it really is kind of that you can't really afford to wait right now because you will be disrupted. And that's one of the things we talk about in the AI world is you're not going to lose your job because of an AI, but someone who knows how to use AI might take your job. Your company might get disrupted by somebody who uses AI because you didn't jump on it.
Right. In fact, I've heard the axiom, and I'd love your impression of this. I know you've forgotten more about this subject matter than I'll probably ever learn. But the thing that I've heard often is that AI doesn't replace people. It's people that use AI replace people.
100%. And I think to allay some of the fears, you do not need to have all the answers as a leader. You just need to be curious and you need to take action. Start small. You don't need to boil the ocean. Learn from it. Scale, right? Then you can kind of go into that, then you get the roadmap and then you start to roll out the bigger projects. But you don't need to do that from the beginning, right? Be proactive, not reactive. Don't panic. Take a measured approach, right? And you need to be the leader who provides that leadership and guidance and rhythm so people will follow you, right? Because AI is not going to slow down. So you need to lead now and you need to always be learning and always be picking up what's next, right? The best time to start this was yesterday. The second best time is today.
The old adage with when's the best time to plant a tree?
Yeah.
Well, 25 years ago. What's the second best time? Right now. That's a riot. So there was something else that came up for me when you were sharing the tale of the two different CEOs, which I thought was brilliant because it really brought it home. And we talked about how this should be embedded in your business strategy. And you were giving advice about, not getting overwhelmed and to learn from it and that kind of thing. And you could use that advice for any business discipline, even beyond AI. So I love hearing what you're talking about. That the thing that really popped up for me was in the danger of not using AI strategically or having the guardrails, as you put it. And it boils down to one word, and you said it 10 minutes ago, that's governance. Are there some elements of a governance protocol or document that you think that our small and mid-sized business leaders should be focused on?
I think going back to that roadmap, and one of the components of that is going to be that acceptable use or responsible use program, right? So you need to make sure you help educate your employees to know that they need to use AI as a thought partner, that they can't share confidential data, and they make sure that they're the ultimate responsibility for what comes out of AI. There's a lot of other documents.
Those three things you talked about just shortly ago.
Now, there's a lot of other pieces that go into it, like an AI cybersecurity policy, right? That needs to be augmented. You need to make sure you have an architecture. So there's a lot of these other things you can get into, but you need to, when you start out small, you start out with a simple framework that everybody can understand. And then you start to ratchet that up as you start to get more and more sophisticated in your AI use.
Excellent. And can you give me I know that you've been on the front end of this. How long has your journey with AI lasted? When did you really started getting serious about adopting it, studying it, discerning between opportunity and threat?
Yeah, so my journey in AI goes back years, maybe decades. But the real AI use for me personally, day to day, happened a couple of years ago when Gen AI first came out, right? And that's when I first started using that as a technology. I'm a business leader first, and technology is my passion and tool set. I'm going to try these things out. So I'm using it to help me as just a tool. Helps me write an email, helps me craft a message. It helps me with a PowerPoint presentation, do some research, simple things, right? But then over time, it became a mindset, right? It's a shift in how you think about things. And I have a sticky note on my monitor here. It says, how might AI help me do this? Now, I don't need that anymore because my mind shift has completely changed so that anytime I'm going to do anything, I've got my AI partner right there next to me.
You're using that as a filter for everything that you do.
It is. It's my value accelerator, right? It's extending my capacity, my capability, my creativity, and my reflection. And it really helps me become a better leader. Now, how do I do that? I have a number of custom GPTs that I created that are my advisors. And one of the first ones I wrote was the John Advisor, right? And this was a GPT that I trained on my writing style and my frameworks and my leadership philosophy, values, principles. I gave it lots of samples of who I am. And over time, it added to that with its learning, its memory of me to become my virtual thinking partner, not my replacement. So when I'm writing something or doing something, I can go back to it and ask for questions. It can give me ideas. It can help me with a draft content. It can help explore different strategies. I created another advisory board full of authors that I use. And when I'm talking about a strategic plan or something like that, I will give it to them and ask them to interrogate it, to poke holes in it, to give me recommendations and suggestions. So really it's around going that evolution, which all CEOs are going to go through. All users of AI are going to go through, right? You start out as a tool, then you kind of get to that mindset. But here's the key. It becomes a mirror of your leadership. AI is a reflection of you. What you feed into it, how you ask questions comes back to you. And I can tell you one of the things that occurred to me recently about this is with AI, the better your prompt, the better the response. So if you go through and give it the clear information about what's the context of the question I'm asking, what's the role I want it to play, that I want it to interview me and ask questions, and then I want it to give me this answer in this specific format, then I get a better answer back from AI. Now, if I take that and apply that to my leadership of people, wouldn't you as a leader and wouldn't you as an employee want to get that kind of clarity when you're asking for help, when you're asking questions, when you're giving someone direction? So it's teaching us to be better communicators by interacting with AI. It's making us more human, not less.
What's fascinating to me as we are working with clients is how critically important, how critically important communications is. And it really starts at the top. And clarity generates focus. Confusion generates cost and threat and all sorts of other issues.
And
So,
fear.
this really,
Yeah.
AI is, it goes way, way, it has so many different business applications. And, we're the generative, like you talked about with chat coming out in 22. I just absolutely love it. But to your 3 points, the third one is you're responsible for the final output. So you got to go through there and make sure that whichever agent you're using isn't hallucinating and sending you in. You don't want to be a Deloitte, right? Can't believe I would ever say that.
You don't want to abdicate your thought, right? Your own research. So if ChatGPT makes a statement, challenge it. Where did you find that information? Give me the source. And if I can't tell you, sometimes it'll come back and says, oh, you're right. I can't find that source. I made that up, right? Because AI is trying to ultimately please you and make you feel happy about what the response is, right? You know how AI is always telling you, that's a great concept. Hey, you really thought this thing through. It's a raw pleaser.
Yeah,
So
that
you
happens
need to
with some
challenge.
frequency.
Yeah,
It's kind of like
challenge.
an attaboy. I
Yeah,
go, yeah, I stuck that landing.
that's for sure.
That
It's like,
is so
well,
funny.
the other thing I like to do is I use multiple AIs. I use ChatGPT. That's the primary one I use. But I also use Gemini. I'll use Claude. I use Notebook LM, which I love, and happy to get into that at some other time. But I'll try asking one AI the same question and see how the different answers come across. Or I
Yeah,
might
I've done that before.
take the answer from ChatGPT and bring it over to Gemini and say, "What do you think of this answer?"
Yeah. In fact, this is so silly. This is not a business application, it's a personal application. We had one of the parts of our faucet in our kitchen area, which you use every day, multiple times a day, break. And, we built this house nearly 20 years ago. And so I couldn't find the manual, et cetera. So I went to a chat. What I did is I took a picture of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I loaded the picture and I said, what is the brand and the model? Chat GPT couldn't do it. Grok
Really?
couldn't do it. And I want your impression on Grok.
Okay.
But you know who could? Gemini. I
Gemini.
mean, they came back with the part number. It was mind blowing. And then I just put that part number and I said, dealers near me. And boom, I connected with somebody that could help me. But I mean, silly pedestrian use of AI, but just absolutely loved every minute of it. So we talked about your journey. So how has embracing AI changed the way that you lead, the way that you learn, and the way that you create value, not only for you personally, but for your clients?
Yeah, I think it really frees up my capacity, my time to be able to spend more time on deep thought and analysis and really thoughtful interrogation of the information. So instead of spending hours trying to write up the notes of a client meeting and then pulling all those notes together and trying to come up with a summary, I can use AI to help me summarize those things. And now I can spend the time thoughtfully reflecting on that. It makes me more effective, right? And when I'm communicating with somebody, I can put my thoughts down in the AI and I can ask it for its own assessment of that. Am I effectively getting the information across? Do they recognize that? Is there a different way to approach it? I'll tell you one scenario I heard about. Haven't done this, but had to do with interactions with the boardroom. And one of the things that one of the CEOs and executive team did is they loaded up a custom AI with all of the personas and personalities and decisions and thoughts of each of their board members into a custom AI. Then they took their executive presentation that they were going to make to that board and put it in there and asked for their opinions and thoughts and asked them to poke holes in it. And it came back and acted as those different personas, different board members with their own ideas and thoughts, and it brought the challenges out so then they could modify their presentation and anticipate all of the hard questions they were going to get in the boardroom.
That is brilliant. I can see a really good teaching application for that.
For sure, 100%. And that's also one of the things that I use it for is learning new concepts and ideas. Maybe I don't have the time to read a 100-page white paper. I can load that white paper into Notebook LM and it can create a summary for me. I can then take that summary and create it into a podcast or a video of the key points. Now all of a sudden I'm able to consume and get the most value out of it in a shorter amount of time. Because we're all in information overload, right? How do you take all this together? The other one I've used it for is deep research on a client. I'm trying to prepare to come and meet with you. I want to be respectful of your time. I don't want to ask you a bunch of questions I can find on the internet, either on your website or on podcasts you've been on. I can use AI to do that and help bring me up to speed so we can get right to the details of what we need to talk about without asking a lot of background.
I would think that approach would really impress the prospective client. It's like, boy, this person has really done their research. I'm going to
That's
pay
right.
attention.
And how many hours did you save doing that, right?
Right. And as you were talking about how they loaded all of the personas of the board members and found out how to, retune or refresh that presentation so it was more relevant and inspiring. I mean, it really goes back to teaching styles, and the three primary are audio, visual, and kinesthetic. And I used to teach at University of Washington for about 12 years, and I was very mindful. Every quarter, I would have a new cohort of seniors. I was very mindful to make sure with my lecture decks and my examples and case studies to incorporate all three, because there's no way. And if you've got a class, and the higher you get up, the smaller the classes get. the more tenured the students are. And if you have a class of 40 seniors, you know that all three styles are going to be there. And so I think that's important to be mindful of. What a fascinating story with the boardroom.
Yeah, and the outcome of that, what I heard from the leader was that one of the board members came up afterwards and said it was one of the best board meetings they've ever had
Because of that
because they were prepared, right? They were
customized
prepared.
presentation.
You know, the last thing you want to do is be in a boardroom and get a question that you weren't prepared to answer.
Right. Yeah. You want to use the attorney concept. You never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to.
100%.
Of course, the courtroom and the boardroom are very different environments. But anyway, that's fascinating. So this, John, has been a great discussion. I so appreciate you coming on the Value Factory podcast. So for leaders who want to take the next step, they've listened to this, say, nearly 45-minute podcast, how can they learn more or begin their own AI readiness journey? Kind of taking it from curiosity to application.
Yeah. And so the first thing I would say is the best way to start is just to start, right? There's a lot of information out there that you can get. You don't need to have a massive plan. You don't need to be a tech guru, right? You can just start with curiosity and courage. Leadership is about direction, not perfection.
Brilliant.
Through OneAccord, though, we can help you with that journey. You're not alone. And so we can help you with that simple AI readiness conversation. We can help you assess where your team is. Are you ready to go? We can help define those goals and opportunities, help you out with that responsible use policy, right? To help guide and train
Get that governance
your
in
employees.
there.
We have a training curriculum that we're offering through OneAccord right now. It's a 9-session course to kind of give you a primer and get you ready and get you going with that. And then we can come in and help you co-create that AI roadmap, focusing on your value, focusing on people's, focusing on how's the best way? Where should we be applying AI? It's not about the tools. It's about alignment. It's about understanding your business. It's about strategy. It's about people. And then it's about technology, right? You need to get the culture right so you can leverage the technology, and it's about an opportunity that's going on right now. It's not tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be too late because your competitors are going to be doing this.
Right.
And so how
the
can you jump on
has
it right
left
now?
the station.
It absolutely has. And I know we're all feeling that way. And I feel the same way, right? As much as I read and study and practice and learn about AI, in some cases, I feel like I'm just way behind. And then in other cases, I feel like I'm way ahead, right? I'm not ready to call myself an expert, but I spend a lot of time on this. And so how can I share? How can OneAccord help you with your journey so you're not doing it alone? And it's not about, we've talked about this. It's not about creating dependency. It's about coming in, helping you lay the groundwork, helping you to get going, and then to let you execute on your own. Let you go let us step away and let you run with it. Now we're going to be there for you. We're your training wheels, but you don't need us forever.
Yeah, and it's about really helping them establish that roadmap so they have their compass heading and they really know what their priorities are.
Yeah.
So,
and it's about, it's about our values, right? Guided by truth, compassion, and service. AI amplifies your leadership. So AI is a journey that does not start with technology, starts with leadership.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's the third time you've said it, and I've really got it. I think that's one of the key takeaways from this.
Good.
Speaking of takeaways, I know that you have led many, many digital transformation journeys. And how can our listening audience get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can look me up, John Manzanares. There's not too many of us out there, so you should be able to find us. You can also go onto our OneAccord website and contact us at OneAccord. You can reach me at john.manzanares@oneaccord.co. That's my direct email address. And I post a lot of content about AI. I actually have a leadership series of blogs that I'm posting on the OneAccord website around leveraging AI for SMB leaders, right? Kind of peeling back the layers a little bit and trying to help you understand that it's not as complex and walking you through the various avenues and the steps that you need to take to kind of take AI to the next level.
Excellent. And for those of you interested in connecting with John, his last name is spelled Manzanares.
Yes, quite.
I share that because I had to type it in a couple times there.
Well,
I'm learning to cut and paste.
And you'll see it on the podcast, so you can just take it from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Your label is right there. That is so funny. Well, John, again, I so appreciate your time and talent. This has been a great episode. Leaders that are ready to get more engaged in leveraging AR in their enterprise, be sure to check with John. Take a look at his content on the OneAccord website. And until next time, I just want to thank everyone for joining the Value Factory podcast. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.